Good evening, Facebook friends, citizens of America and the planet. Welcome to tonight's Fireside Chat. I'm coming to you live from Humboldt County, California, the first stop in my California tour. I'm here basically for the California State Green Party Convention on Saturday and Sunday of this week. I think that's the 11th and the 12th, so come on down and join us. And happy International Women's Day. Happy and struggle, I guess, and courage and strength on International Women's Day. And thank you for being a part of it. Thank you for supporting it. This is a day of women around the world in over 50 countries where women are standing up not only for women's reproductive rights, but also to end violence against women in all of its dimensions. And that's both physical violence, it's domestic violence, but it's also economic violence and health violence. So we're calling for solutions to all of those problems, for full reproductive rights, for health care as a human right, as how we deliver reproductive rights. It should be just part of taking care of women and men, for that matter. We're calling for an end of sexual abuse and domestic abuse, for the protection of women, for the funding for those critically needed programs to give women shelter, to help women out of very desperate and urgent situations, standing up for immigrant women who are in such difficult circumstances now here, where undocumented women no longer feel that they can go to authorities, can't go to police, can't go to public agencies. So one of the, I think, really important things about this International Women's Day is that it is a convergent movement, and it brings us together across borders, and it brings us together across issues. So like this conversation, share it. Let's support each other on Women's Day, on these fireside chats to support building power of, by, and for the people. And I wanted to say a few words about some other developments too, and then we'll move to questions. This is going to be a short fireside chat because on this tour I have a packed schedule and have another event to go to tonight. So I wanted to also mention, besides International Women's Day, a couple other things. Before I leave that though, it's exciting to think about what people are calling for here. People are building on other women's strikes, for example, in Poland, where women stood up on similar issues, but particularly around efforts to deny women abortion rights. And they had such an outpouring of support, they were able to beat back that legislation in Poland. And there have been women standing up in Argentina and other countries around the world. And as you know, on the 21st of January, the day after the inauguration, something like 3 or 4 million women around America all came out to stand up for the rights of women, and for an end to violence, and for economic rights and justice for women. So this builds on that, and it's I think a very hopeful sign that that wasn't a fly-by-night kind of activism, that as people we're standing up like we haven't seen in generations, and that we're building towards more powerful means of action. And while this this strike did not have an a specific set of demands or asks, it had several general purposes, and it represents people beginning to take more effective action, because when you stand up and declare a day of non-participation in the economy and in the establishment, we begin to really exercise some power. So I mention this because there may be more to come. And ideally, I think where we start to get really powerful is when we bring together women's rights with immigrant rights, as happened today, but where we also include labor, and we also bring in climate rights and indigenous rights and the rights for African Americans to to be free from police violence and to be free from the racist war on drugs. When we start coming together for a really broad agenda for people, planet, and peace over profit, and then when we stand up and we say we're not going to participate in the wheels of economic and ecological destruction, that's when we really get to critical mass and we can have enormous power. So I just mention it for people to think about. There's another event coming up on May 1st, which is International Workers' Day, May Day. So it's a time, again, to think about how we can bring our movements together and begin to stand up and stand together on a really broad agenda that meets all of our needs in a comprehensive way. Because none of us will live by jobs alone if we don't also have clean water to drink, if we don't also have a climate in which we can survive. We also need healthcare as a human right, and I would love to see us bringing in advocates for Medicare for all as a part of a joint action. Likewise, to cancel student debt and to have a system of free public higher education as a human right. That ought to be part of it too, because in order to survive in today's world, we need education if we're going to have jobs, if we're going to have a productive and creative economy. So all these things come together, and I think we're only beginning to think in terms now of how powerful we can really be when we stand up and assert our economic power, our power to say we will not participate in a system of economic and ecological destruction. I want to quickly mention a couple other developments. I won't say a lot about them because at this point I think we're still finding out more. But one development is, and these are developments of great concern, North Korea conducted several ballistic missile tests last week, and these were ballistic missiles tests fired towards Japan. And this is a dangerous development, but it comes in response to other dangerous developments. It's common knowledge that North Korea was provoked here by the war games that are going on with the United States and South Korea on North Korea's border. So you had very provocative action of incredible military might on North Korea's border that's threatening North Korea. On top of that, you have a new anti-ballistic missile system, a so-called missile defense system, which has the funny name of Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System. THAADS was just deployed in South Korea. And this has been very provocative to both the Chinese and to the North Koreans. It's extremely destabilizing. Although it's not nuclear weapons, it basically alters the balance of power. It sort of neutralizes the weapons on the other side. So even though it's not offensive, in effect it cancels the offensive capability that's been carefully balanced between the two sides. So this is very destabilizing. And I want to read you what the Chinese foreign minister said. An incredibly reasonable, common sense thing. The Chinese foreign minister said, North Korea should suspend its nuclear activity. In other words, they're saying North Korea has to stop its nuclear program. But he goes on to say that the United States and South Korea must suspend their large-scale military programs, because it's the large-scale military that's provoking North Korea to feel like they need nuclear weapons in order to defend themselves. So the Chinese foreign minister says we should all go to the negotiating table. We need a nuclear-free peninsula, and we need peace in the peninsula. Right now, there is no treaty. There's been sort of a cessation of hostilities from the Korean War, but there's never been a treaty. So you can understand why North Korea would feel very insecure in this situation. And in fact, the best results that we've ever had with North Korea is when we actually engaged in dialogue, and when we resorted to, the evil empire talk and started beating war drums. North Korea responds in kind. So, you can't just go bomb the hell out of a nuclear power. And even to engage in a limited nuclear exchange is unbelievably catastrophic. Even a limited nuclear exchange, by the way, can cause what's called nuclear winter, which means basically that there's so much dust and stuff that fills the atmosphere that it blocks the sunlight, and as a global phenomenon massively reduces food production. So even a limited nuclear exchange can lead to worldwide consequences of nuclear famine, so-called. So we cannot be casual about this. And let us hope that Donald Trump is going to do the right thing here, and is going to ramp down the conflict, not ramp it up. And again, I encourage you, post your questions. We'll take a few minutes for questions. But I would be remiss if I didn't mention the other really major development. Please share this conversation, by the way, so we can build as much people power around this as we can. You have probably heard about the latest WikiLeaks revelations, so-called Vault 7, which is a series of revelations of a program of hacking, surveillance, and cyber warfare being developed, long since developed, being used by the CIA. And that includes being used against Americans. The CIA is not supposed to be spying on Americans. They're supposed to be doing surveillance outside of the country. Well, surprise, surprise. They are surveilling us. And it turns out they can install, they have the tools to install these programs on your cell phone, and I presume on your computer, because they can occupy various programs, including Skype, PDFs, Wi-Fi networks, etc. And they can turn your devices into listening devices. Even their, and so they can bypass the encryption. They don't break into the encryption, but your encryption doesn't do you any good if they've already been reading your keystrokes and they've been recording your conversations. So the long and the short is this is a very alarming new development. And while one of the things that it apparently enables them to do is to use the surveillance programs of other countries and then use them as Trojan horses. So they can disguise their interventions as Russian interventions or as somebody else's interventions. So what does that tell you about all this other madness that's been going on with this, the hysteria about Russian hacking and leaking of the DNC emails? This is what the Democrats cried bloody murder because they didn't like the content of those emails. So they have been very busy changing the subject to blame it on the Russians when the evidence is extremely flimsy. especially now that we hear that they can do whatever they want and put Russian fingerprints on it. That doesn't say that this was the CIA any more than it was the Russians, but this is to say, let's take a deep breath here and let's find out what's going on. And let's not start beating war drums before we actually have good evidence what's going on. Because you have the Democrats saying it's the Russians, and then you have Donald Trump saying it's actually the Democrats. So, and then you can go back to where James Clapper lied before Congress and said that they were not spying on us whatsoever. And now we have evidence of this just, spying on steroids going on the part of the CIA. So I'll just say that there's reason here for us to protest that we are being done a terrible disservice by both parties here, that we need a political system that we can trust, and that includes responsible use of surveillance that's been specifically permitted and that has a warrant, and that is not going on illegally and with extremely devious, underhanded, reckless, destructive techniques. So stay tuned. We're only at the beginning of this mess. We're only just now beginning to find out what's going on. So heads up about that. The bottom line, again, is that we the people, it's in our hands. We have a very dangerous security establishment now. We have people who are out in the streets standing up for women's rights and human rights. We have a very dangerous international foreign policy situation. We badly need to take back the reins of our government and put it into the hands of ordinary people, true human beings, not the 1% that's taking their marching orders from the defense contractors, from the predatory banks, from the fossil fuel giants, from those interests that are not our interests. We need to be running the show here. So again, I urge you to think about going green and joining a movement which is of, by, and for the people, the only national political party that is not funded by big corporate money. We saw what the DNC did to Bernie Sanders, and we just saw what the DNC just did to itself by way of refusing to get rid of corporate money, disapproving every reform proposition that was put before it. So we're at the 11th hour here, folks. It's getting pretty serious. We can't keep beating around the bush. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Let's not be fooled 1,000 times until it's absolutely too late. It's time for us to stand up for an America and a world that works for us all. So I'm going to jump to a couple of quick questions here. Monica Olson, good evening, Jill, representing Oregon. Just wanted to say thank you for answering my question on your last chat. Looks like I'll be joining the Green Party campaign training next month. Hopefully, I'll be shaking your hand soon. I look forward to it, Monica. Thank you. Joyce Gum says, converge. When society protects women, children, and animals, we're moving in the right direction. Jason Bertiotti says, yes, a mass general strike is exactly what we need to send a message to the establishment. Rick Simoneau says, you make America great, Jill. You and women like you. Thank you so much. Donald Roger Palmer says, I'm seeing many good suggestions. I like that. Please understand, this is a grassroots organization. We local Greens are volunteers. A few of us are wealthy. If you see a need, please feel free to do your best to make it happen. That's right. Exactly. It is in our hands. If we're not doing it, it's time to start doing it. Those who are complaining, stand up and pitch in. It won't happen without you. Tina Rocket says, how many states is the Green Party eligible to run in 2020 at this point? So Tina, we came out of this election with more ballot status than we've ever had before. I think it was around 15, 16 states, something like that, where we preserved our ballot status. But until we improve our membership, we have to keep petitioning our way back onto the ballot, or we have to earn it by running candidates statewide. It's different in different states. But the bottom line is, if we get people to register green, then we will have automatic ballot status. In most states, you can achieve ballot status through registration. So I encourage everybody listening to please sign up. Oh, and one other thing I want to encourage you to do, again, please go to the website of our two candidates who are fighting right now for everything that we're talking about. And the Democrats are getting really scared in Philadelphia, where Sherry Honkala is running in the 197th district. The Democrats are pulling out all the stops, letting the air out of the tires, stopping a canvasser working, just doing door knocking, stopping and frisking, threatening people's jobs, because there's been such an outpouring of support for Sherry Honkala, founder of the Poor People's Economic Human Rights Campaign. I want to urge you, please go to her website, Sherry197.com, and sign up to help with phone banking or make a contribution, whatever you can, $5, $27, the characteristic burner contribution. Sherry is really fighting up a storm there now. She was actually given an endorsement by the People's Committee of District Council, I believe it's 47, it's the AFSCME Council. They gave her that endorsement, but there are some higher ups now in the party that are trying to get them to retract the endorsement. Sherry was also endorsed by Our Revolution, and apparently someone is putting the screws on them too. This tells you how effective Sherry is being, that the Democratic machine in Philadelphia is quaking in their boots. The reason for this special election is because the second legislator in a row was just convicted of fraud. And then the Democratic candidate was denied ballot status because they didn't live in the district. So this is a fraudulent Democratic Party machine in Philadelphia. This is a sign of where our politics is going. And the revolt around Sherry is a sign of where we are going as a people, that we are saying no to this politics of corruption. We are saying yes to a politics of, by, and for the people. So please go to Sherry's campaign. That election is taking place in about, it's on the 21st, so it's less than 2 weeks away. Your support now can make all the difference. Immortal Technique is going to be canvassing out there for Sherry. There have been some other major big name endorsements as well. You can find that at Sherry's website. Come out to canvass if you are in the Philadelphia area. We need you to door knock and get the word out, because people are tired of being thrown under the bus, especially in these low income communities. So Sherry could use your help right now. Couple more quick comments. David Long says, we are already working on 2018 in the Nebraska Green Party. Go, David. Chelsea Ackers says, the U.S. needs a mental health overhaul. What do you believe will help this crisis? Absolutely, Chelsea. So we could start by ensuring that everyone has comprehensive health care, head to toe, cradle to grave, in a improved Medicare for All system that will cover your mental health care as well as your reproductive health care. It will cover your dental care, your eyes, your ears, your hearing aid if you're a senior and you need that kind of assistance. We should have comprehensive health care. Let's take the middleman out, ensure that our dollars go for health care. And that's all, not for paper-pushing bureaucracy and red tape. That's how we can afford it. Cover everyone for the same total cost that we're paying right now, and we can distribute that cost more justly. Stephanie Major says, humanity needs to stand up for one another. David Long, peace offensive. Yes, thank you, David. Melissa Rose, every platform of the Green Party can be accomplished easily if we take our military budget down a notch. Couldn't agree more. We saw last week Donald Trump propose an additional 9% to our military budget. Our military budget is already 55% of our discretionary budget. More than half of our discretionary dollars are going to the military, which is not making us safer. For the $6 trillion that we've spent on these wars for oil, $6 trillion, a million people killed in Iraq alone, and tens of thousands of U.S. soldiers killed and maimed. What do we have for it? Failed states, mass refugee migrations, and worse terrorist threats. They're not getting better, they're getting worse. So we can fix this. Peace offensive is the way to go. We need to be cutting the military budget and putting those dollars into true security here at home. Jessica Pennell says, love you, Jill. Love you back, Jessica. Your sanity and voice of reason is radical in an insane world. John Benoit says, I hope that we can convince people who are clinging to the Democratic Party that they're hanging onto a sinking ship. It's like being in an abusive relationship and not being able to get up and walk away. But after a while, you realize that you can't keep making excuses for your political abuser. They just keep throwing you under the bus. Time to stand up, get your life back together, and create the world that works for all of us. We can actually do that, not inside the Democratic Party. So stand up, join us, and let's take our future back. Last comment here from Kennedy Simonetti. America needs a full-on wake-up. People are still so apathetic. The rest of us need to remain vigilant, vocal, and inspirational. Unifying various social movements under one unified umbrella would be amazing. We should have a People's Summit. I love it. Great idea, Kennedy. Thank you so much. Thank you to all of you. Like this, share this. Let's get the word out. Let's keep fighting. When we stand up together, we are absolutely unstoppable. Forget the lesser evil. Fight for the greater good like our lives depend on it, because they do. We have the power the minute we stand up and use it. Thank you all so much. I'll see you next week. Take care, and check out Sherry's website, Sherry197.com. Throw something in if you can. This is a really critical time to help Sherry over this hump. It will be transformational if we have a Green in the legislature. Sherry would be a representative for us all, and it would be a real shot fired over the bow of the political establishment. We are coming. Thank you. All the best. Take care. Good night. Keep fighting.